It's been a busy few days in the NBA since the Boston Celtics won the championship, and we're going to jump into the few things that have happened already to kick off the offseason. Starting with Pascal Siakam. He got signed to a max deal by the Indiana Pacers, which is not something I was expecting to see happen as quickly as it did. I didn't think it was going to be immediately after the finals and the first free agent off the board, but it wasn't a guy I was expected to actually be going anywhere. You don't trade for Siakam in the middle of the season if you're the Pacers when he's on the last year of his deal if you aren't already expecting to pay him in the offseason. That part, no shock. The part that is a little bit surprising is the fact that he got a max deal. Siakam's the type of player that fits the mold of guy who gets a max contract in the NBA, but he is still your second best player on the Indiana Pacers, which is a team that doesn't typically pay the luxury tax. And now, between Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton, they go into next year with like $85 million tied up in two guys. Now, that doesn't put them into the luxury tax by itself, but it does put them over the cap. And I'm curious to see if they're willing to spend beyond this to continue improving the roster. Are they going to use their full mid-level exception? Are they going to try to, finagle some deals around the edges with minimum contracts, or are they going to kind of try to make sure that they duck the luxury tax and just kind of squeeze whatever they can out of the roster that they've pretty much already built? So I'm curious to see how that goes beyond this, but this isn't really a shock and shouldn't be to anybody. Following that news, we had the news about Monty Williams being fired from the Detroit Pistons. And I don't have a ton that I can really say about this. Dude got the biggest payday for a coach ever, then he had the longest losing streak ever, and then he got fired. What else can I really hit on? I'm not shocked that they didn't want to bring the guy back based on how last season went, although I do think it's probably some sort of a record as well of most money owed to a coach when he was let go. And I don't know necessarily if it needed to be rushed. But again, there were just some things that went down last year that had to make you scratch your head on whether this guy was the right guy for the rebuild you were trying to do. And if you don't believe that is the case, then yeah, I guess cutting ties now just makes as good a sense as any, even though you owe him a lot of money and you're going to have to pay somebody to do the job. So kind of curious what that ends up being. We'll see. Then we've got another coaching news that came out down the pike. JJ Redick getting the Lakers job. I sigh because I made a short video about this a few weeks ago when I said they shouldn't hire JJ. I didn't personally buy a lot of this Dan Hurley stuff. Not because I'm some kind of guru with insider knowledge or anything, but it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I didn't think it made a whole lot of sense for anybody involved. So when that passed, everyone knew that it was JJ's job. He was the guy, and I still don't think they should have hired him. I like JJ. He's one of my favorite basketball content people out there. He's going to be a really good coach if this is what he wants to do with his life. I truly believe that. And I'm going to be rooting for him to succeed because, again, I really like JJ. But I think he's going to be a good coach for the next team that gets him after he's inevitably fired by the Lakers for not being championship ready immediately after jumping straight from coaching children only. That's his coaching experience, is children, to the hottest seat in the NBA. And this franchise fancies themselves a championship contender every year, whether or not they've made championship level decisions. Most of the time in my adult life, they have not. It still boggles my mind that there is a pretty basic success formula to building a team around a guy like LeBron, or a lot of the superstars that we have in this league. There's a pretty tried and true formula that you can follow to have success. And the Lakers have been mostly defiant about trying to avoid doing just that. The basic success formula is a competent coach with enough experience to carry some respect in the locker room and the confidence that they're not going to shrink in the moment. Bonus points if they're defensive minded, because your offense is going to mostly run through your star. So let the coach focus on defensive schemes. And then surround said stars with role players that can defend within those schemes and shoot or dive if they're a big. That's pretty much worked all the time with a guy like LeBron. And aside from a 2-year stretch, which they followed those basic principles, which, by the way, resulted in a championship, and then the following year, they were a pretty popular pick to repeat if AD doesn't get hurt in that first round series. Like, it obviously worked. But then, of course, they, like every other year, have tried to buck the trend, right? They've pretty much taken every opportunity to do that, with whether it be inexperienced coaches, one-way talent role players, or focusing all of their offseason efforts on trying to bring in a ball-dominant guard to put next to LeBron James, which they'll likely do again this offseason, to go with their first-time head coach, who they'll probably surround with ex-Laker players that he played against, instead of stacking his bench with experienced coaches that can help him navigate the pressure of working for a franchise with the highest expectations, regardless of whether they're warranted. I hope that it works out, because I think JJ's a really smart guy. I'm not going to bet on it, at least not for this team. The final bit of news that has dropped as of the time that I record this, just came within a couple hours ago here, is Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey being the first trade of the offseason. And this is one that I did not see coming whatsoever. It would make sense to put these pieces together. I figured Josh Giddey was going to be out in OKC. I figured Caruso would probably finally get traded out of Chicago. But being traded for each other in the first move of the offseason, I didn't have that one on my bingo card. But it does make sense, at least at first glance. Again, this just came out, so a lot of this is like first reaction stuff. Giddey's a young guy that can help the Bulls team that should be trying to get younger. They should be trying to rebuild. And he should be a decent complement in the backcourt to a guy like Coby White, who's more of a shooter than a distributor. So you can play a little bit more to Giddey's strengths of being a facilitator, and a little bit more to White's strengths of being a scorer. They both have pretty good size. I mean, Giddey has great size for a guard. Coby White is not small either. So you've got size in the backcourt and some versatility there, some lineup versatility. You can pair them with, perhaps another small guard in some lineups, or just make them your de facto point guard and shooting guard in other lineups and be bigger around them. You've got something here. Like, it's not going to help you win games now, but it is at least a couple of young pieces that you can start to build something around that are on a similar timeline, and it makes some sense. On the Thunder side of things, you get a guy with familiarity with your head coach, apparently, which is something I didn't know until Twitter told me, which I think is a bonus. And he's obviously a monster defender in the backcourt, so he's going to fit into that part of what the Thunder do absolutely seamlessly. Like, I am terrified for opposing teams when you've got, like, Lou Dort and Alex Caruso just absolutely hounding you at all times. He's going to miss some time like he always does, but they've got the depth to absorb that. What he doesn't have is Giddey's size. He's not small. He's like 6'4", I think, with the way he's listed, 6'3", 6'4", something like that. So it's not like he's a small guard necessarily, but he's not a 6'8" wing either. They still need to address the size issue. They need to get Chet some help in terms of rebounding and protecting the rim as well. I think that he's a really, really good fit for what they do well, while they still need to address some of the stuff that they don't. But the good news is they've got about 476 first-round picks that they can use to trade for whoever that guy is if they so choose to do so. So let me know what you think of the first couple of days here since the finals have taken place, the first few Woj bombs of the offseason. And tell me in the comments whether you think JJ Redick is going to be a good fit for the Lakers coaching job, or if they should have gone another direction, or honestly, if he should have gone another direction. Because to me, I think that's the biggest key piece. Is I think there was a better first opportunity for him that would have put him in more of a likelihood of success. That's just my opinion. Let me know yours again in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and like and all of that stuff too.